Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV on VidMe. Now, of course, many people have asked me about this, about the Westminster Attacks, and I know it's been a couple of weeks now, and they've asked me to comment. Now, I deliberately left a little gap before commenting. I did write a little piece on Hapanwo Voice, the Hapanwo Voice website, just a couple of days later, but I didn't say anything immediately because when these events happen, I make a point of saying nothing initially. And the reason is the original narrative of the attack has to be established. So what the official story is saying happened, what the media is saying happened. It's very important to basically just step back and observe in the initial few hours and days after something's happened, because that's when as I said, the information comes in and any aberrant evidence comes to light within the official media narrative. Now, what we've been told happened is this. A man called Khalid Masood drove a car along the pavement of Westminster Bridge in London. He struck multiple pedestrians, including 3 police officers. One woman jumped off the bridge into the River Thames to escape him, and she luckily swam to safety. Masood then rammed the railings of the Houses of Parliament and the car came to a halt. The driver, Masood, decamped and he ran into the forecourt of the Palace of Westminster, where he stabbed a policeman to death with a knife. And luckily, this policeman was not armed. Luckily, one of the other policemen he was armed, and he shot and killed Masood. And 5 people were injured, if you include Masood himself. 5 people were killed, pardon me, and 40 were injured. Now, that's the basic outline of the story. It's a very simple attack, and no weapon was involved other than the car and the knife. You can't exactly ban those. Now, when this story broke, a Facebook friend, a sort of semi-skeptic Facebook friend, got in touch with me, and he said, "Ben, I'm urging you tonight to please resist the calls of a false flag. Please, for me, could you please do that?" There's 3 pleases in that. Now, what I think he means is when he says that is he means it unconditionally. He said that no matter how much evidence emerges that might support the Westminster attacks being a false flag, we must still doggedly insist that it is not. And that's another great example of skeptic logic, or anti-logic, as the case may be. They've done this over 9/11, they've done this over the 7/7 bombings, which were false flags. Well, guess what? In my opinion, it seems like this is not a false flag. On the Hapanwo Voice blog, I left the question open. From what I've seen, since then, it's looking more and more likely that the official story is correct. Because I have no doubt, I don't doubt that real Muslim terrorists exist. The reason they exist is because the British government has bred and groomed as many of them as they possibly can in the various mega mosques that they've set up deliberately in association with Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Council of Britain, one of their quangos, and they've deliberately stuffed their pulpits with Saudi hate preachers, Wahhabists, Salafists, which they brought in deliberately. And this is an important point. This is an important point. And I'll say a few more words about this in a minute. Okay, I'll say a few words more in a minute, but I'll come back to it. However, first I do want to address certain anomalies involved in this, which really do need explaining. Now, one of those is CCTV coverage. There's no nearby CCTV footage of what goes on. The closest CCTV image is from, I think, the top of the Shard or something, which is about 1.5 miles away. You can see a car going along the bridge. You can see the woman who fell into the river. You can see her jumping in. That's about it. Now, London is by far the most extensively and intrusively surveilled city in the world. I think 1/4 of all the world's CCTV cameras are in London, or some ridiculous statistic like that. Yet for some reason, Westminster Council decided last September to switch off the CCTV for the entire borough in order to save money. And this is in a world where if you want a budget for any kind of security related issues, you get a blank check. This means conveniently there is no CCTV record of the incident. Now, as I said, I don't believe this was a false flag attack, but it just seems strange. And it may possibly be a prelude for some other incident that they've got planned. Because it's reminiscence, it echoes the death of Princess Diana in London in 1997, where we're told, there's almost no CCTV footage at all of Diana's last journey from the Ritz Hotel to the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, where she was killed. She was killed in this car crash, and possibly her death was certified by other means. Now, there's also a couple of other images in the press which I think are suspect, and this doesn't mean that the event was a false flag, but it does mean that there was someone hastily put in a kind of Jessica Lynch type hero story in there. Jessica Lynch was a young woman who was a soldier in the 2003 Iraq War, who was captured by the Iraqis. Now, she was captured. She was injured she was driving a lorry. She was part of the logistics team, and she was driving a lorry, and the lorry crashed, and she broke her leg. She was taken to a local hospital, and I think you probably know the rest of the story. Basically, the staff of the hospital, the doctor looking after her, wanted to return her to the Americans and contacted the US Embassy to say, "We're going to return her. We want to return her to you." And they said, "Fine." But rather than agreeing to to have her returned peacefully, the US Special Forces were sent in. They landed a helicopter outside the hospital. They run in with their guns waving, handcuffing everybody. Even a patient in a hospital bed was handcuffed, apparently. And they sort of carried her out, as if to say they had to rescue her from these evil Iraqis. So it was obviously a piece of propaganda. And something similar happened in this particular case. It may be hastily and hurriedly concocted after the event happened. MP Tobias Elwood MP carried out first aid on the fallen policeman, the policeman who sadly passed away. And now the funny thing is, you see this MP clearly carrying out cardiopulmonary resuscitation on this man. Standing all around him are paramedic teams, are the professional and trained members of the paramedic team. They're just standing there passively looking on. There's even a portable defibrillator, a device for starting your heart once it's stopped. It's standing to one side. It's not even being used. In that situation, sure, being on the scene, he carried out an attempt to save this man's life. But the moment the paramedics arrived, you think he'd step aside and let them do it. They're the trained professionals, aren't they? So now some people within the conspiracy sphere, and I mean people I don't agree with, even though I am a conspiracy theorist, are saying that nothing happened. There was actually nothing happened in Westminster that day. All the entire story was concocted. As some of them are saying about Sandy Hook. And all the victims are fake and everything like that. That's not true. And I know it's not true because I know someone who was caught up in the middle of it. A friend of mine was actually in Westminster at the time. Now, he didn't see the event happen, but he saw the people running. And the policemen there was some policemen goading them on, saying, "Run, run, get out of here." And he ran with them. And one of the people who was running was a young girl who was injured. A young child, a 5-year-old, I think, was injured. And they had to go into Westminster Abbey, and the door was shut on them. So something did happen. A real attack did happen, whatever it was. Now, I think whatever is real or fake in this horrific situation, I just offer my deepest condolences to the loved ones of those who lost their lives. That's all I can do, really. Now, what I was saying is the reason this may well not be a false flag attack is simply because real Muslim terrorists do exist, and I do accept that. I'm not that extreme a conspiracy theorist. I know they don't. I know they do, but I think the problem with people like Geert Wilders, who who almost became the Dutch Prime Minister a couple of weeks earlier, is that they, and other people within what's called the counter-jihad, Tommy Robinson, people like that, they believe this, which I think is false, that the active role here is being played by the radical Muslims themselves. Okay, there is a covert mass movement of conquest within the Islamic world, basically reenacting what was done centuries ago during the Crusades, when the Muslims attempted to conquer Europe and the Crusades stopped them. And there was the conquest of Spain, and then the Reconquista, where Charles Martel went and kicked the Moors out of Spain. And they see this as a kind of modern continuation of that. And basically the Muslims are the active ones. They're taking advantage of liberal weakness, because our countries are ruled by some really, really weak and ineffective sort of kind of white leftists, which they are in some cases. In some, there's a level of truth in that, of course. And they're just wringing their hands and saying, we can't be racist, and allowing uncontrolled immigration from Muslim lands. But see, I don't think that's what's really happening. And this will be controversial. It's a controversial thing to say, but so what? I'm not scared of controversy at all. I believe, yes, there are real terrorists. There's a real agenda here to install radical Islam into Europe, but the active role is not being played by the Muslims. The Muslims are playing a passive role here. The government aren't letting them in and allowing them to be radical Muslims. They are bringing them in deliberately and turning them into radical Muslims. There's a long story. I'll have to do another video about it because it's a long story, but the government aren't that so stupid. They know what they're doing, and they're doing it deliberately. They have a long-term strategy involved here, which is leading, I think, up to a civil war. I think they want a civil war. As I said, they're bringing in these hate preachers from Saudi Arabia, radicalising the immigrant youth and the native youth as well. And Wilders doesn't see. Geert Wilders has said a lot of things I really don't agree with. He's saying things like ban the Quran or ban a book, things like that. Forcing mosques to close. Well, get rid of these. Certainly, get rid of these Saudi mega mosques and kick these hate preachers out. Certainly, but allowing the Muslim population nowhere to worship, just saying you're not allowed a place to worship. No, I don't think that's fair. Same with banning the burqa and things like that. I don't believe the state has a right to tell people what they can and can't wear on a public street. I think the burqa is a symptom, not a cause, and banning it it's just not only unjust and sets a dangerous legal precedent, but it's just foolish. I mean, I believe that the burqa is a symbol of multiculturalism. It's a symptom. It's an effect of multiculturalism and this agenda that I've talked about, this strategy. And once this is exposed, once this strategy ends, then it'll probably simply fall out of fashion. I mean, I can't imagine the burqa catching on among white Western women. I really can't. So there's no need to ban it. And as I said, public streets, you should be allowed to wear what you want on a public highway. So I could say more about this subject, and no doubt I will in future. And I've made some of my YouTube videos cover this, and some of my posts on the Hapanmo Voice website. So we'll have to see what happens next. But I mean, it looks to me like there's no reason to call this as a false flag. There's no necessarily any reason. The Tobias Ellwood story looks like it was concocted, but that doesn't mean that the official story of the Westminster Attacks was untrue. In the meantime, I think we should be aware that the suspicious elements involving CCTV in Westminster may actually refer to another attack that may be coming soon. It's possible one that will now be aborted because of what Masood did. Masood actually could have saved many, many more lives without realising it. Simply because by carrying out this attack, it's possible that Westminster Council will no longer be able to find an excuse to remove CCTV. But no doubt the government will still milk this to have more and more state intervention. There's going to be more. I'll tell you more about Vault 7. I'll do another video on Vault 7 and what WikiLeaks have discovered. But there's talk about a ring of steel around around the capital area, as it's going to be called probably. So if you're in there, I mean, you'll be all right. The thing is, the MPs, the politicians who make these decisions, they have security guards. They're fine. The policeman who was guarding them was unarmed. The policeman who was killed, he had no weapon. He was unarmed. So he was stabbed to death very easily. And ordinary people, the other people, ordinary people are killed, they weren't armed. We don't have security guards looking after us. The people who die in these attacks are invariably ordinary people who are helpless. That's why the government don't give a damn. So, thank you for watching Herpanwo TV on VidMe. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.